Welcome to Life by Design, episode 335. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards. We are creators of Life by Design with many locations worldwide. Each week on the show, we discuss the principles and the practice of Life by Design. Today's episode, I was going to say brought to you. We don't have a sponsor anymore, Cray Show.
Dude, you're all over the place. I didn't get introduced. You're going to talk about the sponsor that we don't have anymore.
I know.
You sure have you had your coffee this morning?
I have had coffee this morning, yes. Apparently not enough coffee. So welcome to the show, Cray Show.
Oh, thanks. Nice to be here.
Yes,
happy
as
to
always.
Be here.
Now, this week we're talking about a research study that was looking at chiropractic, specifically chiropractic care delivered to veterans in the United States through the VA and pain medication. And specifically, we're talking about opioids. So, Cray Show, talk a bit about, opioids in general and, what that looks like in our culture and why this potentially, has a lot of valuable information for people that are listening.
Sure. Well, I mean, I know what the media wants us to think about this, so I don't really know what it looks like in our culture, but I do know that opioids are a class of pain medication that work really, really well. They do their job. They remove the pain. They're very successful at that. The problem is that they tend to lead to addiction, or at least the tendency of people who are under this medication is towards addiction. And then, of course, once you're addicted to something, life becomes very challenging and very difficult. And there's all sorts of, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think opioids are same classes like heroin, morphine, codeine. I think those are that's opioid class. Is that correct?
I believe so. I'm not well versed on all my drug and pharmacology, so.
No, it's out of our scope of practice, so we don't need to necessarily be 100% versed on it. But I think that's the class. And I mean, if you hear stories, I've seen enough rock and roll documentaries and listened to enough people, that you stay away from these drugs because of their addictive nature. And now, of course, you have these people, and the veterans are a very unique population. So you have, these people who, and in the study, I believe they studied combat, people who are actually in combat. So these are people who have seen the horrors of war,
right.
The stuff that like we see on TV, they've lived it, and you can just imagine the amount of stress and post-traumatic stress and the amount of chronic pain and suffering that some of these people are going through. So, I mean, now you have somebody that's really sick and really in a lot of pain, and you have this medication that really works, but is really addictive. So you can just see the potentials for problems here. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I wrote this last week, the show notes for the podcast, but I believe what they looked at was the veterans who are under chiropractic care in the Veterans Hospital, the VA. And what they've noticed is that the ones who have received at least one chiropractic adjustment are much less likely to repeat any opioid prescription that they would have gotten.
Yes. So if I talk about the study here a bit, it was looking at 14,000 veterans, and then they broke it down into a group of people who had at least one chiropractic visit. It was 4,396. So they also had opioids and they had a chiropractic visit or a chiropractic adjustment. Now, this doesn't account for people who had more than one chiropractic adjustment. So it could be
there's
as few as one. Yeah, and it could be much more. But what was interesting, as you said, and the point of the study was in the period following, so in the time frame following the opioid usage and the chiropractic visit or visits, whatever happened during that time, they were less likely to be receiving opioid prescriptions. So when you look at that in terms of the context of how opioids, as you said, work, but they're potentially addictive and all the different issues that comes along with that, I think anything that can reduce your use of opioids, and obviously it must have, again, I'm taking a guess here, reduce their pain levels. Otherwise, probably wouldn't have been a reason not to take the opioids. So there was something that happened in some type of physiological way that they recognized that made them not want to take their opioids. So, I think... So, go ahead.
So one of the things that's interesting is they noticed the percentage of, they noted this actually, because I think what they were getting at when we look at the one section where they talk about just the data and the analysis, it seems like veterans are not just being prescribed opioids just for pain, right? Like it's obvious that in the study, they say, you're 80%, I think it's over 80% or 89% more likely to get an opioid prescription if you're in moderate to severe pain. But then you're 49% more likely as a veteran to get an opioid prescription if you smoke if you're depressed, and 47% more likely to get an opioid prescription if you smoke. So I think what they're trying to get at with that is there are other reasons, not necessarily just pain, why they're giving this class of medication to these veterans.
Right. Well, interesting along those lines, and again, we don't know this from this study particularly, but there has been other research on chiropractic care and depression and anxiety and other types of psychological states where there seemed to be a positive influence of chiropractic care. And so, again, we could make the extrapolation that maybe some of these cases, it wasn't a change in pain, but maybe they had less anxiety, or maybe they felt better, or maybe they were in a better mood. And so, again, they didn't turn to the opioid. Regardless of what the rationale was of the person, at the end, the person's taking less pharmaceutical drugs that are potentially addictive and having a positive influence. And really the main point of today's episode, and it doesn't have to be a deep one, it's just this constant reinforcement, Cratio, that adjusting the spine where a problem exists has an effect on the physiology of the body, whether it be on pain.
A positive effect.
Right, a positive effect. Again, we just see this over and over. And so, for us, again, we've seen the end of the movie. We see it every day in our practices. We've, got walls lined with people's success stories in the thousands. And so we know that this has a positive influence on people, but it's really wonderful to continually, because this research exists. This is in the Journal of Pain Med. It's not like it was published in some, chiropractic rag mag on the back page, with no peer review. We're looking at research, and the research is supportive of the fact that correcting problems with the spine has a positive effect on the physiology of the body. I think that's really what people need to know is, to me, there's really no reason, I just can't think of a rational reason as to why somebody who has a spine should have it examined. And if a problem exists, that problem should not be corrected. And I think this is what we see over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, I can't disagree, I think I do think you said something that's super interesting. We might want to talk about for a bit. You noted that it starts with an examination, right? It doesn't just start with, chiropractic care, is for everybody, and everyone everyone should have their spine manipulated or adjusted or whatever you want to call it. Right. There's an analysis. There's an examination. There's
I think you are bringing up a good point, and just kind of taking it further. This is probably one of the biggest myths that exists among chiropractic, and people looking at using chiropractic. And you might read this and say, "Oh, good. If I'm in pain, I'm going to get a chiropractic adjustment," and understand that, properly applied, that adjustment would only be delivered in the area where a problem existed, and that problem would only be determined through an analysis or an examination. And to keep moving down this path, where that problem exists may or may not be related to where the pain is being perceived. We're not going to have time to get into a big, long topic about perception of pain and where that happens and all the neurological systems involved, tissue damage, is it in the brain? Again, this has been studied and hypothesized and theorized for decades and decades and decades. All I know is that if there is a mechanical problem, let's say, take your car for an example. Your car is pulling to one side. You don't go in and say, well, my car is pulling to the right, so the problem's on the right. You say, look at my car and identify where a problem exists. And maybe the car, has a problem somewhere that is seemingly disrelated to where the problem, or quote unquote problem, or symptom is probably a better analogy or word here. It's disrelated to where the symptom exists. And that's really the important piece here, is you've got to identify problems and correct problems. And, this is, I think, just a general principle for life. You're not trying to treat symptoms in your life, whether it be physically, emotionally, or otherwise. You've got to figure out where the core problems are, and you need to address them. And chiropractic, properly applied, at least in my eyes, is absolutely no different.
Yeah. I think that's kind of period, end of the story for this one.
All right. Well, I think the call to action today, Cratio, is for anybody listening to the podcast who is yet to find themselves a Life by Design or corrective chiropractor to send us a message, Jamie@lifebydesign.com or Kreshimir@lifebydesign.com. We're more than happy to turn up our relocation services for you and find a corrective chiropractor or a Life by Design chiropractor who can take care of you, at least do an analysis and benefit you and your family in terms of what it is that they can do and how they can help. So please do that. Take advantage of that, guys, please. And as always, go to the show notes, lifebydesign.com/podcast. Check out today's episode. Everything will be there, including the article. And as always, thank you for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.